What happens if Putin wins in Ukraine? Most people think the war ends. They're wrong. It's the beginning of something far worse, and it's heading straight for American soil. In this video, we break down the hypothetical scenario that Pentagon war planners, NATO strategists, and intelligence analysts are quietly gaming out behind closed doors. A world where Russia consolidates its victory, expands its alliances with China and Iran, and begins projecting power toward the Western Hemisphere in ways that would make the Cold War look like a warm-up act. This isn't fear-mongering. This is strategic analysis based on real doctrine, real alliances, and real military capability. If you care about American sovereignty, American security, and the future your children will inherit, you need to watch this all the way to the end. Subscribe and turn on notifications for real geopolitical analysis that goes deeper than the headlines. Right now, tonight, there is a loaded firearm sitting in a glove compartment or tucked under a seat in roughly 1 out of every 3 American vehicles. If you are one of those people, if you carry because you believe in your right to protect yourself, your family, and your property, then what I am about to tell you is going to hit different than any geopolitical analysis you have ever heard. Because the threat I am about to describe is not happening in some distant desert or some frozen European border. It is heading directly toward the world you live in, and the man sending it your way is Vladimir Putin. Most Americans think the war in Ukraine is somebody else's problem, a European conflict, a regional dispute, something that happens on the news between the weather and the sports scores. And I understand why people think that, because that is exactly what they have been told. But what if I told you that the outcome of that war, whether Ukraine wins or loses, will directly determine whether your children grow up in an America that still leads the world, or an America that has been pushed into a corner by an alliance of hostile powers that smelled weakness and decided to act on it? What if I told you that a Russian victory in Ukraine would not end the threat, but multiply it, creating a chain reaction of military, economic, and territorial consequences that would reach your gas station, your grocery store, your bank account, and eventually your front door? That is the scenario I am about to walk you through. And by the time I am done, you will understand why the war in Ukraine is not Europe's problem. It is your problem. It is America's problem. And ignoring it is the most dangerous thing this country could possibly do. If this is your first time here, this is where we cut through the noise and show you the geopolitical forces that are actually shaping your future. Subscribe and turn on notifications, because this situation is evolving by the day. Let us begin with a question nobody in Washington wants to answer honestly. What happens the day after Putin wins? Imagine for a moment that Ukraine falls. Not today, not tomorrow, but eventually. Imagine that the weapons stop flowing, the alliances fracture, and Kyiv is forced to accept a deal that gives Russia everything it wanted: territory, neutrality, demilitarization. Imagine Putin standing at a podium in the Kremlin, declaring victory over the West's most heavily supported proxy. Imagine the message that sends to every other nation on Earth. The first thing that happens is not military. It is psychological. A Russian victory tells every authoritarian leader on the planet that the United States and its allies can be outlasted. That Western resolve has an expiration date, that if you are willing to absorb enough pain and inflict enough damage for long enough, America will eventually lose interest and walk away. China watches that lesson and applies it to Taiwan. Iran watches it and applies it to the Persian Gulf. North Korea watches it and applies it to the Korean Peninsula. And every mid-sized dictatorship from Venezuela to Belarus watches it and concludes that aggression works. as long as you have nuclear weapons and the patience to wait out the news cycle. That single psychological shift, the perception that America does not finish what it starts, would do more damage to global stability than any single military defeat in American history since Vietnam. And it would happen overnight. But the psychological damage is just the beginning, because what comes next is structural. A victorious Russia does not go home and celebrate quietly. A victorious Russia consolidates, it absorbs, it expands, and it builds. Start with the territory. A post-victory Russia controls not just Crimea and the Donbass, but potentially large swaths of southern and eastern Ukraine, some of the most productive agricultural land in Europe, significant mineral deposits, and critical industrial infrastructure. Russia's economy, which the West spent years trying to strangle with sanctions, suddenly has new resources, new labor, and new strategic depth. Then look at the alliances. Russia, China, Iran, and North Korea have already been moving toward a loose coalition of mutual support throughout this war. Russia supplies energy to China. China supplies electronics and dual-use technology to Russia. Iran supplies drones to Russia. North Korea supplies artillery shells. Each transaction deepens the relationship. Each relationship makes the next transaction easier. Now imagine that coalition after a Russian victory. The glue holding it together is no longer just shared interest. It is shared triumph. They won together against the West. That shared victory transforms a loose coalition into something much more dangerous. A confident, emboldened axis of powers that believes it can challenge American dominance and survive. And here is where it starts coming home to you personally. Russia's military doctrine has never limited itself to Europe. Russian strategic thinkers have written extensively, in publicly available documents that most Americans have never read, about projecting power into the Western Hemisphere, about building relationships with anti-American governments in Latin America, about establishing naval and intelligence footholds in Cuba, Venezuela, and Nicaragua, about using energy leverage, cyber warfare, and information operations to destabilize American society from within. These are not conspiracy theories. These are published strategies from Russian military academies and defense journals. The only thing that has prevented their full implementation is the fact that Russia has been tied down, first by economic weakness, then by the war in Ukraine. Remove that constraint, and the doctrine goes from theory to practice. A victorious, resource-rich, alliance-backed Russia begins rebuilding its military at an accelerated pace. Its defense industry, already operating at wartime production levels, does not slow down after victory. It redirects. The factories that were producing artillery shells for the Donbass start producing next-generation missiles for global projection. The shipyards that were maintaining Black Sea frigates start building submarines for Atlantic and Pacific patrols. Within 3 to 5 years of a Ukrainian defeat, Russia could realistically have rebuilt and modernized enough of its naval and air forces to resume the kind of global power projection it conducted during the Cold War. But this time, backed by Chinese capital, Iranian drones, and North Korean manpower. Now picture this: Russian nuclear submarines resuming regular patrols off the American East Coast. Russian long-range bombers flying approaches toward American airspace, testing response times. Russian intelligence operatives working through Venezuelan and Cuban networks to build influence operations targeting American elections, American media, and American social divisions. None of this is hypothetical in the sense that it has never happened before. All of it happened during the Cold War. The only question is whether it happens again. And the answer to that question depends almost entirely on what happens in Ukraine. Hit that like button right now if this is connecting dots you have not seen connected before, because the next part is where it gets personal. Let us talk about what a resurgent, victorious Russia means for your daily life in America. Start with energy. Russia is the world's third largest oil producer and the second largest natural gas producer. A post-victory Russia, freed from the full weight of Western sanctions and emboldened by its alliance with China and Iran, would have enormous leverage over global energy markets. It would coordinate with OPEC Plus to control production levels. It would use pipeline politics to squeeze European allies into compliance, and it would use energy prices as a weapon against any country that tries to resist its agenda. You would feel that at the pump. You would feel it in your heating bill. You would feel it every time you buy groceries, because the cost of transporting food is directly tied to fuel prices. Every dollar Putin adds to the price of oil is a dollar out of your pocket. Then there is the military budget. A resurgent Russia, combined with an aggressive China and a nuclear-armed Iran, would force the United States into a level of defense, spending not seen since the height of the Cold War. That money comes from somewhere. It comes from infrastructure. It comes from education. It comes from healthcare. It comes from the programs that American communities depend on. Every dollar spent countering Russian submarines off the coast of Virginia is a dollar not spent on roads in Ohio or schools in Texas. Then there is the draft question. Nobody in Washington wants to say this word out loud, but military planners think about it constantly. If the United States finds itself in a genuine multi-front confrontation, Russia in Europe, China in the Pacific, Iran in the Middle East, the all-volunteer force that has served this country since 1973 may not be sufficient. The pressure to expand the military, to reintroduce some form of national service, to ask American families to send their sons and daughters into a conflict that could have been prevented, that pressure becomes real. Not theoretical, real. And it all traces back to one decision point: whether the West allowed Ukraine to fall. Now let me address something directly, because I know what some of you are thinking. You are thinking, why should America care? Why should American taxpayers fund a war on the other side of the world? Why is this our fight? And that is a fair question. It deserves a serious answer. The answer is that you are not funding a war. You are funding the prevention of a much larger, much more expensive, much more dangerous war that would directly involve American soldiers and American soil. Every Javelin missile sent to Ukraine is a Javelin missile that does not need to be fired by an American soldier on a NATO front line. Every Russian tank destroyed in the Donbass is a Russian tank that will never roll toward Poland or the Baltic states, NATO allies that the United States is treaty obligated to defend with American lives. The cost of supporting Ukraine is measured in billions. The cost of fighting Russia directly would be measured in trillions, and in American blood. That is not a political opinion. That is an arithmetic reality that every Pentagon war planner understands. And here is the part that connects to the gun in your car. You carry that firearm because you understand something fundamental about the world, that strength deters aggression and weakness invites it. You do not carry because you want to use it. You carry because you know that the visible willingness to defend yourself makes it less likely that you will ever have to. That same principle applies to nations. Ukraine is fighting right now so that America does not have to fight later. Ukrainian soldiers are absorbing the cost of deterrence in blood, in suffering, in destroyed cities, and shattered families, so that the confrontation does not expand to a scale where American soldiers are doing the same. If that deterrence fails, if Ukraine falls, and Putin concludes that aggression works, then the next test of American resolve will not be in Eastern Europe. It will be somewhere closer, somewhere that requires American boots on the ground, somewhere that turns the theoretical into the personal. And when that day comes, the question will not be whether you have a gun in your car. The question will be whether your country still has the strength and the credibility to prevent the fight from reaching your driveway in the first place. Because deterrence does not work in pieces. It does not work selectively. It does not work when you defend some allies and abandon others. The moment Putin proved he could take a European country by force, and America let it happen. Every red line America has ever drawn, in Taiwan, in the South China Sea, in the Persian Gulf, on the Korean Peninsula, becomes negotiable. And negotiable red lines are not red lines at all. They are invitations. Let me leave you with this thought, because it is the one that keeps defense strategists awake at 3 in the morning. Every empire that has ever retreated from its commitments has told itself the same story. It told itself that the distant conflict did not matter, that the faraway ally was not worth the cost, that pulling back would bring peace and savings and relief. And every single time, without exception, that retreat did not bring peace. It brought a larger war, closer to home, at a higher price, with fewer allies willing to stand alongside. Rome told itself that. Britain told itself that. The Soviet Union told itself that. And if America tells itself that about Ukraine, history will repeat itself with the same merciless precision it always does. The war in Ukraine is not about Ukraine. It is about whether the rules that have kept great power war off American soil for 80 years continue to hold. It is about whether the alliances that protect American interests around the world remain credible. And it is about whether the next generation of Americans inherits a country that leads the free world, or a country that watches from the sidelines while hostile powers carve it up. Putin is betting that America will look away, that Americans will get tired, that the news cycle will move on, that the cost will seem too high and the conflict too distant. He is betting that you will not connect the dots between a war in Eastern Europe and the security of your family, your community, and your country. Prove him wrong. If this video opened your eyes to a connection you had not seen before, share it with every person you know who thinks the war in Ukraine does not affect them. Hit that like button. Subscribe if you are not already part of this community, and drop a comment telling me, do you think America is doing enough? Or are we sleepwalking into a confrontation we could have prevented? I will see you in the next one. Stay armed, stay informed, and never, ever look away from the things that matter most.